At the family gathering, I tried to sit down and my own daughter said, "That's for paying adults." Everyone laughed. I stood there, trembling. My grandson pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't worry. I know what you did for all of them." Hours later, he showed me something that changed everything. I guess I just need to say it straight. I raised 3 daughters on my own after their dad left. He walked out when Camille, the youngest, was barely walking.
I remember that night.
He packed 2 bags, said he couldn't do this anymore, and that was it. Never paid child support. Never called on birthdays. Nothing. So it was just me. I worked nights cleaning offices in Atlanta and did shifts at a local diner in the mornings. I barely slept. We lived in a small 2-bedroom rental in Decatur. The girls shared a room. I slept on a futon in the living room for 10 years. But we made it work. I didn't take vacations, didn't date, didn't buy new clothes unless it was from Goodwill. Everything I had went to them. When they needed help, I gave it. Raina got herself deep in credit card debt at 22, $6,000, and I took out a personal loan under my name to help her. I was still paying it off 5 years later. Tara got pregnant at 19. I watched her son, Elijah, so she could finish nursing school. I took the night shift so I could be with him during the day. Camille wanted to start a bakery. I co-signed a loan. She stopped paying on it after a year, and the bank came after me. My credit tanked. But I told myself, this is what mothers do. You give, and if you're lucky, you'll see them happy and successful. I never asked them for anything. I never wanted them to pay me back. Just a little respect. Maybe a thank you once in a while. Maybe a call. But over the past few years, they've been distant. Not in a busy way, more in a cold way. I'd hear about family events after they happened. I'd ask if I could help with holiday dinners and they'd say, "We've got it covered." I showed up one Thanksgiving with a pecan pie I'd made from scratch. Camille looked at it and said, "Oh, we already have dessert," and set it down on the floor by the trash bin. Nobody touched it. It's the kind of stuff that builds up over time. You don't want to believe your own kids are freezing you out. You think maybe you're being too sensitive. But that feeling in your gut grows. The silence gets heavier. Last Saturday was a family reunion. They rented out a lake house about 40 minutes outside Athens. Big place, plenty of tables, food, music. Everyone chipped in. At least that's what Camille said when she texted me the invite. She made it sound like I should be grateful to even be asked. I got there around 2 p.m. Brought my folding chair and a tray of homemade deviled eggs. I walked up the path and saw everyone already there. Music blasting, kids splashing near the dock, food spread out on tables under the canopy. I stood there for a bit. Nobody noticed. Eventually, I walked up to the table near the food, where there were empty chairs. I went to sit down. And Camille, without even turning her head fully, said, "Mom, that's for paying adults." Everyone laughed. I stood there, one knee bent, like a fool. Raina giggled.
Tara smirked.
Even Camille's husband let out a loud laugh. Nobody said, "Let her sit." Nobody offered a spot. I just stood there, heart pounding, face hot. I backed away slowly and found some shade under a tree. Stood there for an hour.
No one checked on me.
But then Elijah came over. He's 17 now.
Taller than me. Quiet.
Always been more serious than the other grandkids. He tapped my arm and said, "Grandma, don't worry about them. I know what you did for all of them." I looked at him confused. He didn't explain, just said, "I'll show you later." I didn't cry that day. I held it in. I stayed for pictures, smiled, pretended it was all fine. But inside, I felt like I didn't belong to my own family anymore. Later that evening, as people were cleaning up, Elijah found me again. He had his phone out. He looked nervous. "I've been keeping track of some things," he said. "Stuff I thought you should know." He showed me screenshots. Messages between Camille and Raina, making fun of me. Joking about how I can't afford anything and should be grateful to even be invited. They called me a burden. A joke. There were more screenshots, photos of financial documents, some he found on his mom's desk. My name was on a credit card statement. A card I never signed up for. Thousands of dollars in charges. Another account in my name, linked to Camille's bakery. Elijah whispered, "I think they used you, Grandma. And now they're trying to cut you out so you won't find out." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the screen. I felt like my whole body went cold. These were my daughters. My flesh and blood. I gave them everything. And they laughed at me. They stole from me. And they thought I'd never figure it out. That night, lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. I went over every memory, every time I said yes when I should have said no, every bill I paid, every sacrifice. And I realized, I don't owe them anything anymore. I'm not going to yell or cry or beg for respect. I'm going to show them what it feels like to be underestimated. They made a mistake by thinking I was weak. After that night, I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed time to think.
Time to plan.
I spent the next few days going through my files. I pulled out every old loan document, every letter, every payment receipt. I went to the bank and requested copies of anything in my name, past or present. And sure enough, there were 2 credit accounts I never signed for. One opened 3 years ago, the other almost 5. Both had addresses linked to Camille's old bakery location. I met with a woman at the credit union, a manager I used to serve coffee to when I worked at the diner. She helped me print out everything and pointed out where my signature had been forged. I stared at the paper. Camille didn't even try to mimic my writing. It was sloppy.
Rushed.
She must have thought I'd never find out. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. But I started watching. Listening. Then one afternoon, I got a call from Tara. She said, "Mom, we're thinking about doing a beach trip next summer. Just the core families. Maybe we'll bring the grandkids. Would you be okay watching the pets while we're gone?" That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a slow fade out. They were cutting me off. Gradually, quietly. One event at a time. Keep me at a distance, then use me for what's convenient. They didn't even want me there anymore, not even on vacation. I said, "Sure," and hung up. But my mind was racing. 2 days later, I was out getting my oil changed when I ran into Cheryl, a woman from my old church. She said, "Hey, I saw Tara's fundraiser. How's your leg?" I didn't know what she meant. She pulled up the link on her phone. There it was. A GoFundMe page in my name. "Help my mom walk again," it said. A photo of me from last winter when I had slipped and twisted my ankle on the ice. It claimed I needed surgery, that I was living in poverty, that I had no support. It had raised over $9,000. Tara created it. The withdrawals went to her checking account. That was the moment I stopped questioning myself. I wasn't just being disrespected. I was being exploited, lied about, used for sympathy and cash. I went home and opened a private folder on my computer. I started saving every document, every screenshot, every voicemail. I even recorded a few calls. Georgia is a one-party consent state, so it's legal. I called Elijah and asked if he'd help me scan the old loan documents and compare signatures. He said yes, without hesitation. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a lawyer. Her name was Marlene, and she didn't flinch when I told her what happened. She said, "This isn't unusual. Elder financial abuse by adult children is real. And it's ugly." We spent 3 hours going over everything. She said I had a strong case. Not just for fraud, but also identity theft and defamation, depending on what else we found. I didn't cry during that meeting. I felt steady, focused. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt like I was standing on solid ground. But then things started moving faster. A week later, Camille texted me. "Hey, can I put your name down for a rental application? Just temporary, my credit's still shot." I didn't respond. Raina left me a voicemail saying, "Mom, can you co-sign Elijah's college loan? I can't qualify." They were still doing it. Still pulling from the well. Still assuming I'd say yes, like always. But they didn't know what was coming. I had no intention of yelling at them. I wasn't going to beg for decency. I was going to hit them where it mattered: reputation, money, and control. Because that's what they stole from me. and now I was taking it back. I thought I had uncovered most of what they'd done to me, but I was wrong. 2 weeks after that last call, I got a letter in the mail from the IRS. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe something about my Social Security. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was an audit notice. Apparently, there were discrepancies in my reported income over the past 3 years. The notice said I'd received rental income and business payments that I never declared. Rental income? I don't own property. I barely own my own car. I took the letter straight to Marlene, my lawyer. She got quiet as she read it. Then she pulled up a tax reporting database and looked into my records. What she found made my hands shake. Camille had listed me as a silent partner on her bakery's paperwork after I co-signed her loan. And for 2 years, she had filed taxes that claimed I received monthly business income one never saw a dime of. It wasn't just stealing now. It was full-on fraud with the government involved. If the IRS believed her records, I would owe taxes on that fake income. Thousands of dollars. Marlene looked at me and said, "This is bigger than personal betrayal. This is criminal." We filed a fraud report with the IRS and froze all accounts that had my name linked. But that same week, another twist hit me even harder. I was talking to Elijah again. He was helping me go through old paperwork, organizing files, scanning receipts. At one point, he looked up and asked, "Grandma, did you ever get the inheritance from Grayton Joyce?" I blinked. "What inheritance?" He went quiet. "You never got the letter?" Joyce was my older cousin. She lived in Florida and passed 5 years ago. She didn't have kids, and we used to talk a few times a year. I hadn't been able to make it to her funeral, and I figured she'd left everything to a charity or something. Elijah pulled out his phone. He opened an email from his mom's account. It was a PDF scan, something he had found by accident while doing homework on Tara's laptop. It was a letter from a law firm in Tampa. The letter was addressed to me. It said I was named in Joyce's will and left $30,000. And the letter was dated almost 4.5 years ago. It had been opened, signed for, and scanned into Tara's email. I sat back in my chair. My whole body went numb. They didn't just steal my money and laugh at me. They stole my inheritance. They opened mail meant for me, forged documents, and took the money. All 3 of them had signed a letter stating they were acting on behalf of the estate, posing as caretakers while I was mentally unfit. They'd made me sound like I had dementia. I called Marlene and sent her everything. She said, "This changes things. We're not just talking about fraud. This is theft of estate property, mail fraud, and elder abuse." But even that wasn't the last twist. A few days later, I went to the pharmacy to refill my blood pressure meds. The pharmacist pulled me aside and said, "Your new insurance policy was denied." I told her I didn't have new insurance. Turns out, Tara had submitted an application for Medicaid in my name with fabricated medical information. She made it sound like I was incapacitated and living in her care.
Why?
So she could collect caregiver benefits from the state. I went home that day and sat in the dark for a long time. It wasn't just about respect anymore, or even money. They had built a system around me, a web of lies where I was nothing but a tool. A ghost they could use for cash, for sympathy, for credit. I wasn't a person to them anymore. I was a name to exploit. And they thought they were untouchable. But they were wrong. I gave them weeks. Weeks to come clean. To say something. To try and make it right. They didn't. Instead, they acted like nothing had happened. Tara texted me asking for Elijah's birthday gift. Raina sent me a meme about crazy moms. Camille posted on Facebook about celebrating strong women, with a photo of all 3 of them laughing in matching dresses. Not a word about the fraud. Not a word about the lies. So I decided it was time. Elijah helped me with the final step. We gathered everything: screenshots, loan documents, tax filings, inheritance letters, the Medicaid application, even the GoFundMe lies. Marlene, my lawyer, filed formal fraud complaints with the IRS, the state, and the Florida probate court. We also filed a police report for identity theft and elder financial abuse. Then I made it public. I didn't post on Facebook. I printed everything out, every page, and mailed it, certified, to each of them. I also sent copies to their workplaces. Camille lost her job at the local real estate agency within 48 hours. Her employer said they could not risk a legal entanglement. Raina worked at a nonprofit. They didn't fire her, but they put her on unpaid leave during their own internal review. Tara was a nurse at a private clinic. When the Medicaid fraud paperwork surfaced, she was reported to the state board and suspended. But that wasn't the end. Remember the fundraiser in my name? The one they created about my failing health. I wrote a letter, just plain truth. I mailed it to every single donor who contributed. More than a few reached out in shock. One man, a retired firefighter, said he'd been scammed once before and now he was going to the DA. I forwarded that to Marlene. Then came the court summons. Camille was charged with tax fraud and identity theft. Raina was named as an accomplice on forged financial documents. Tara was cited for Medicaid fraud and mail theft. It made the local news. Not front page, but big enough to make waves. 3 sisters accused of exploiting elderly mother in financial fraud scheme. They tried to spin it. Said I was confused. That I was being manipulated by Elijah. That I was angry about not being invited to more things. But the documents spoke louder than their lies. I took them to civil court too. I wanted the $30,000 inheritance, the bakery loan damage, the IRS penalties I had to clean up, and punitive damages. The court ruled in my favor. Tara had to sell her car and move in with a friend. Raina started doing online side gigs. Camille filed for bankruptcy. They all looked at me in court like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. The mother they used wouldn't have fought back. But I did. And Elijah, he stayed by my side through every step. He's in college now. Full scholarship. Wants to study law. Says he learned a lot watching this play out. As for me, I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. But I'm done. I've blocked their numbers. Changed my address. I live alone now, in a small place with a porch and a garden. It's peaceful. Sometimes I miss the dream I had of family, of holidays and laughter and grandkids playing under the tree. But I'll take peace over lies any day. They didn't just lose a mother. They lost the one person who would have stood by them when the world walked away. And now, they're standing in that silence they created.
Alone.